We are glad to really have you around.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to minister to your church. But it looks like it's to the world since you've put me
It's to the world.
On Facebook Live. So thank you for the opportunity. Now, one of the verses the Lord used to call me to the ministry is Isaiah 55, verse 5. And it says, "Surely you'll summon nations you know not, and nations you do not know will come running to you because of the Lord your God, the Holy One of Israel, for he has endowed you with splendor." So it's a privilege to speak to the nations at this particular moment through the Karura Church Forum. Now, some of you may wonder why this is called Parentine, not parenting. It is parenting during the quarantine. That's how the words were merged together to come up with that new word, Parentine. And I'm going to be talking about raising adolescents in this particular session. And so for the next 90 minutes, we will all engage. I will speak for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then I'll pause to get your interaction. It'll be a session where we will interact together over the next 90 minutes. I will work with the Navigators of Africa. I lead the Family Life Ministry for the Navigators Africa, and also I'm the founder of Raising Future Parents, where we rebuild families to strengthen nations. And this is a picture of me and my lovely wife. We've been married 35 years. For those who will be watching this in future, this is the year 2020. We've been married 35 years, and we've got 3 children. Our youngest in the middle just finished college last month. The lady next to her got married last August and lives in Ohio with her husband. And our son, Michael, is working in Austin, Texas. This is Mindy and her husband, Tony, our firstborn, married to Tony. Now, ordinarily, if I was teaching a course on raising adolescents, I would cover various topics. I will talk about how children transition into adolescence. In fact, these are some of the things that I'll talk about today. And then we look at how teenagers see the world. And after that, we look into why teenagers do what they do. Very fascinating topic. Not just teenagers, but why people do what they do. Then we look into how to influence our teenagers for good and for God. Those of you who have raised children in a long time realize that raising young children and influencing them is fairly easy. But how do you influence your teenagers for good and for God? How do you get into their thinking process and be able to influence them? Then we talk about the changes that dealing with changes that you notice in the teenage stage of life. And then I would normally close my lectures by talking about issues of self-esteem and also give a bonus lecture on fathers and their sons. So today we'll talk about transitioning into adolescence, and especially want to highlight some of the challenges that you may be experiencing in your home with your children during this prolonged stay. This COVID-19 period has given us some unique opportunities with the children, but also revealed some unique challenges. Some cracks have been revealed in the lives of many parents. This course is Bible-based, and I hope you take no offense. We love the scriptures, and we go to them without any hesitation and without any apology. I'm going to begin by looking at the different stages of growth in the lives of a child. The infant, the word infant is just a fancy name for a baby. And baby up to about, toddler stage, the biggest need is trust. They want to trust you. In fact, without you, they struggle. We are not like animals. I've worked with wildlife, and you go out to Masai Mara, and a wildebeest is born, and in 5 minutes is walking. Or or a giraffe is born and falls down 3 feet and it struggles and gets up and begins to walk, but not so with a human baby, made in the image of God, delicately and accurately made, but needing to trust parents. They rely on others to meet their needs. And at this particular stage in life, unfortunately, many Kenyan parents leave this infant in the lives of a frustrated household. Now, don't let me go there because I can talk about that. But as the child grows, ages 3 to 6, they are learning to be independent. They are walking, they are potty trained, and they want to do things for themselves. Ages 6 to 10, they're taking initiatives. You want to put a shirt on them, they say, no, I'll do it myself. And it's great. They see you washing dishes and they get a little stool, they climb on it, they want to help you wash dishes. This is a stage of learning. They are following you around the house like a shadow. But many parents have no time for their children. They think they are coming in the way. Many parents are focusing on tasks to be done instead of relationships to be preserved. Parents, you can delegate tasks, but you must not delegate relationships. And the child is growing and now comes to the teenage stage of life, the one we're going to be focusing on today. This is a wonderful stage of life. Some people fear the teenage stage of life. There is nothing to fear. In fact, the word teenager only makes sense in the English language, where there's the age 13 to 19. But the issue is not teenager. Nothing dramatic happens at that stage of life. I would prefer to use the term adolescent, as the kids are transitioning from childhood into adulthood. And this transition can begin at around age 9 for some of those children and can go on up to age 21. So one of the myths I like to demystify right now is that nothing horrible is going to happen when a child becomes a teenager. Now, it's a stage of life where the child is growing very quickly. When a child is born, that early stage in life, they are growing quickly, but this stage of life is the next fastest growing stage. They are growing physically, they are searching for identity, they are beginning to understand themselves, and they're trying to find out, who do I want to become? What do I want to be? In one moment, I'm sure most boys have wanted to be a pilot at one moment. They want to be pilots. Another moment, they want to be an engineer. Another moment, a researcher. Another moment, they want to be a teacher. Another moment, they want to be a doctor. Why do they keep changing their mind? It's because of who they've been exposed to most recently. And the exposure tends to pull them on one side. Now, the parent needs to be that stable person who helps, who is a bouncing board for this teenager, who is listening. Some parents will come and say, you are so confused. Make up your mind what you want to become. Yes, it's true they are confused, but your role as a parent is not to remind them of their confusion. Your role is to listen to them as they air out their thoughts and intentions, and to let them know that that'd be a great career to pursue. Don't worry, in 2 weeks they may be changing their mind, and expose them to the world they're trying to explore. And don't worry that they changed their mind so many times. Just walk alongside them. The teenager may not want you to, but they actually need for you to. And then pretty soon they transition into the young adult stage. They transition into the young adult stage, ages 20 to 40. This is the age group where decisions are being made, decisions on intimacy. Many people who get married in this age group, and they are making a commitment to an employer. They are making a commitment to a bank. They are making decisions and getting into relationships that will last them the rest of their lives. Now, let me sound a caution right here. If intimate relationships are made during the teenage stage of life. And now I want to narrow down that word intimate to sexual intimacy. If your teenager becomes sexually intimate, they will shortchange their search for identity. And they will go into adult life still searching for identity. It's almost like plucking a mango from a tree before it matures. That mango never ripens. And so as parents who are raising teenagers, we need to work through these issues, work through with them on the issues of identity and help them. You be the one available to fill in the emotional questions. They come with a lot of questions. Don't be tired of it. Listen to them and fill in the emotional questions. In another session, I could talk about how to do that. But let me proceed with this progression. So the young adult hopefully have found their identity in the teenage stage of life and now making commitments to an employer and to a mate and stuff like that. The middle age 40 to 65, most parents of teenagers are in this age group. I will be 60 this year, and I love my age. If I was asked to go back to any other age, I'll just say, let me stay right where I am right now. It's an age where you stay productive and you are creative. You have a sense of purpose and you go for it. You get many invitations, but you say no to many of them, but you zero down to the ones within your line of purpose. That, of course, presupposes that you have worked out your life prior to this stage in accordance with your purposes. If you have not, some middle adults are still searching for identity. Then from there, you move on to the older adult stage. This will be the stage of your parents, 65 and above. I know some of you have younger parents than that. Many of these parents are looking at life, and some of them have wonderful memories. They love life. You ask them how they're doing, and they tell you all about their children and their grandchildren, and their lives face are beaming. Oh, but there are some of them who are not beaming. You ask them, how is Joshua? And they say, oh, Joshua, he's okay. He came out of jail last week. Oh, and how's Rebecca? Oh, Rebecca is fine. She's back in drug rehabilitation. We hope she'll come out okay. Ooh, and how is Riziki? Riziki is okay. She's on to her third marriage, and we hope it will catch on this time. That is not what you want. And as this older adult is telling you about their children, their face drops. And there's shame on their face. Now, as a grown man, there isn't very much you can do about the decisions your children are making. But there's a form of guilt that will come upon you if you know that when they were growing up, you did not pay attention to them. Friends, if my children make bad decisions today, I'll be sad, but I will not be guilty because I made the investment at the time that I needed to. So let's now move on from here, having set that framework. And remember, we're talking about parenting teenagers. Your child will always be your child. My father will be 88 this year, and I'll be turning 60 this year. I am his child. But friends, I am no longer a child. So I will always be my father's child, but I will not always be a child. And as you consider your children, and especially your teenagers, remember, they will always be your children, but they will not always be children. They are transitioning into adulthood, and this transition is taking place whether or not you're aware of it. It's taking place and will continue to take place. In this stage of life, there's going to be some behavioral changes. The behavioral changes are not necessarily permanent. They're going through a stage, but the physical changes are permanent. and you do want them to be permanent. The behavioral changes may change as the person matures. Let me highlight a few things before I give you 9 things to watch out for. At around age 16, many young teenage girls having challenges relating to their mother. And many mothers are very disheartened and very discouraged. They don't know what to do with their 16-year-old. If you're in that situation, mom, hang in there. By the time she transitions to age 17, she'll become your best friend. If dad is in the home, she's getting along with dad, but not getting along with you. She seems to be opposing everything you say. This is not the end of the world. Just hang in there. Remember, your 16-year-old has never been 16 before. They don't know how to be 16. They are trying to be 16 and getting on your nerves. Don't worry about it. Stick with them. Don't abandon them. In a short while, they'll be changing and becoming much more pleasant to be with. Let's shift a little bit and look at our Lord Jesus Christ at about age 12. It's interesting. Many of us know Luke chapter 2 and verse 52 that talks about how Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. But let me take a little bit back to earlier verses in Luke chapter 2. I'm going to make some remarks on verse 48. But before I do that, some background to this. The parents of Christ and other parents had gone to Jerusalem to worship. This is something they did annually. And as they finished their worship session, their worship time, they were going back home. And the parents assumed that Christ was with one of their relatives. And after they went some distance, they realized he wasn't with them. And they began to look for him. And as they looked for him, they went back into Jerusalem and found him seated, reasoning with teachers of the law. And verse 48 says, when they saw him, they were astonished. Now, I want you to notice that word. There's a word describing an emotional reaction. They were astonished. And what happened? The mother said, son, why have you treated us this way? I imagine her putting her arms akimbo. Why have you treated us like that? Behold, your father and I have been anxiously looking for you. There's another emotional word, anxious. They were astonished and anxious, perhaps a little upset. In that statement, they are almost blaming Christ for doing something to them. Why have you treated us this way? Do you find yourself sometimes in that kind of situation? Why you are asking your children, your teenagers, why they have done what they have done? You're explaining your father and I have been anxiously looking for you. Do you have anxious moments in the raising of your teenagers? Are you sometimes astonished at what they do and what they have done? Now, listen carefully as we look at the response from Christ. Christ is totally surprised. He's surprised. He says to them, why is it you're looking for me? Mnanitafuta kwa nini? Did you not know I had to be in my father's house? Oh my goodness. Did you not know? Christ expected his parents to know. He was 12 years old. His parents had been walking with him through life. He expected them to know that the time has come when he ought to be going about his father's business. But I want you to notice something else, a twist in words. The mother says, your father and I have been looking for you anxiously. Jesus said, I have to be about my father's house. Use of the same word father, but completely different meaning. You sometimes find yourself talking with words that you think were familiar, but you and your teenager mean something totally different. The Bible says they did not understand that statement that he had made. They didn't understand. There was a misunderstanding in that family. The parents did not understand. And there are times when you don't understand what's going on with your children. But here's the beautiful thing, that although the ingredients for a fight were all there, anxious, astonished, perhaps even upset, not understanding one another, the fight did not take place. How do I know that? Because in verse 51, it says, he went down with them and to Nazareth and continued in subjection to them. The word continued here has a connotation of this is something he'd been doing previously. He went home and continued in subjection. If this was happening to some Kenyan family or some other family around the world, the journey back home would be nil by mouth. No one is speaking to the other, or if they are quarreling. Not so in this family. And the scripture says in verse 52, and Jesus kept increasing in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. Friends, that's what you want for your teenager, to keep on increasing in wisdom, in stature, and in favor with God and man. You want that teenager to continue being subject to you, but you're going to be releasing them over time, as we'll see, perhaps even over the course of this lecture. You want a situation where there are conversations going on. Granted, you may not understand all your teenager is saying, and they may not understand you, but that's not a reason to raise voices in the home. Pastor Joshua, would you like me to stop for questions and interactions, or just keep going and have questions at the end? I will wait for you to say something about that, Pastor Joshua.
Well, Daktari. Hello, Daktari.
Yes, I'm listening.
Oh, yes. I think we can go on for just the next few minutes. Probably we can stop at around 10 past 10.
Okay. And take some questions at that point.
And then we can stop and take some questions, and then we can finish up. So I think we can just keep going until probably, let's look at 10:15. Let's look at 10:15.
Very well, very well. Okay, let's look at what a rebellious teenager in the Old Testament, what happened to that teenager in the Old Testament. There's a frightening verse in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 21. Deuteronomy 21, verse 18 to 21. It says, if a man has a stubborn and rebellious son who will not obey his father or his mother, when they chastise him, he will not even listen to them. Then his father and mother shall seize him and bring him to the elders of the city. And they will say to the elders, this son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey us. He's a glutton and a drunkard. Then all the men of the city shall stone him to death. So you shall remove the evil from your midst, and all Israel will hear of it and fear. Now, rebellion was a horrible thing. Notice the passage does not say if a child, but if a son. And we'll be talking about sons and daughters at some point, as opposed to children. Now you may be asking, so Stan, so why are you not teaching us to do this? The reason I'm not teaching us to do this is because there are certain things that never made it to the New Testament. You'll recall how the Lord handled the situation of the woman caught in adultery. She was guilty, but the Lord did not pass judgment on her in the way that was prescribed in the Old Testament. He did not condemn her, but he sent her off with a very tough command: go and sin no more. So he did not tolerate her sin, but did not stone her. And so we do not stone rebellious teenagers, although some of them will be stoned by the public if they do rebellion out there. We don't teach for us to stone them, but we teach for you parents to set a standard for them and to work with your teenagers to instruct them and to teach them and to discipline them. And in a moment, I'll be sharing with you some of those thoughts. Now, A rebellious nature is conceived and nurtured in a home where parental control has been relinquished. You see, parents are supposed to be in charge of their children. The book of First Peter, the scripture talking about deacons, it says they must have their children under control with all dignity. There are homes where children are under control, but there is no dignity in the way it is done. God wants children to be under control with all dignity. So when that's not happening, a rebellious nature is conceived fairly early in life and is nurtured in a home where parents relinquish control of their children. And much of this rebellion starts off when the child is much younger. You come home, it's Friday evening, the home you have, if you live in Kenya, and I'm aware this is an international audience, you live in Kenya, there are certain dishes we like to eat in Kenya. Perhaps it's the evening for ugali and bitter herbs if you come from my home area. And your 4-year-old says, I'm not eating that. Well, they don't want to eat it. And so a typical Kenyan parent turns around and says, Auntie, that spaghetti of yesterday, do we still have some more of it? Auntie is the house help that works in that house. And house help quickly looks in the fridge and the spaghetti is not there. And he says, no, it got finished, but don't worry, I can fix some really quickly. Within a few minutes, the spaghetti and your 4-year-old is quickly getting her way at age 4. Now, some of you are thinking, but she didn't like it. Well, that's true. She didn't like it. But we only get to do in life what we like? No. Many of the commands of the Lord to our lives are not commands that we like, but they are commands that are necessary for us to obey, to enjoy the life that the Lord has sustained for us. And so that child begins at a very early age to dictate what they want to eat, and the parents give in very quickly. In the meantime, the child is growing. And very soon they become a teenager, and now they are making their demands. You see, much of this rebellion starts off very early, and we don't even think it's anything. They are running away from what you expect them to do, and we think it's even cute. The rebellious person is always wanting to be in control. They always want their way. This child says, I'm not eating anything. I'm not eating this ugali. I want spaghetti, and you let it be. Whether the reason is good or not, you are allowing them to have it. And if they don't get it, they throw a tantrum. And if they happen to have a permissive parent, this child gets their way as they grow. And pretty soon they become a teenager in school, pretty soon a young adult at a place of work, and their tantrums continue. Pretty soon, this rebellious young person is a parent of teenagers. So now you have a rebellious parent with a rebellious teenager. I'm sure I'm not painting your situation. I'm just talking about your neighbor. But have you met people like that? Friends, when you've got a set of rebellious children, don't ask yourself, why are they so rebellious? Ask yourself, where were their parents when they were becoming rebellious? And in this COVID season, some of you are beginning to realize, oh my goodness, I didn't know my child. These children were away in boarding school for so long, you didn't really know them. And perhaps you're not liking them because your paths are crossing each time and there's a lot of conflict going on. Perhaps these children during this COVID season are revealing character traits in you that you didn't even think you had. Perhaps they are longing to go back to boarding school because it is safer there, because they are not being harassed by the parents. Now I'm going to paint a picture of 9 different things that you can expect in this stage of life. And some of you, especially in the confinements and lockdowns of COVID-19, some of you are beginning to experience this. Number 1, your teenager wants some independence. They want to be separate from you. They don't want to be separate permanently, but they want a bit of independence. See, when your kids were younger and you came back home, They came around you like a shadow. They followed you wherever you want. Not so in this stage of life. They want to be separated from you for a while and spend time with their friends. Some of these teenagers have been in boarding school and have met and spent time with other children who have different values. And they're coming back home, and this COVID season, this quarantine season, they are trying out some of the things they learned from their friends. And these values they're bringing back home are not similar to the values in your home. And so there's constant clashing going on. These teenagers are influenced by peer pressure. And in this COVID season, since they can't go out to their friends, they are permanently on their social media with their friends late into the night. And when you speak to them about it, they feel completely misunderstood. In fact, they feel persecuted. You're thinking, what is wrong with these children? You are frustrated with them, but they are equally frustrated with you. You just haven't realized they are adolescents and they are growing and they are needing this time with their friends. These teens are becoming very self-conscious. This is point number 2. Very, very self-conscious, and they are worried about their looks. And if you happen to have a 13, 14, 15-year-old, and you also have a 4 or 5-year-old, the teenager is preoccupied with his looks. They go into the mirror and they're looking at that little pimple for 5 or 10 minutes. And when you look at their face, you don't see any pimple. But they're seeing it. They are worried that the boys are going to notice it. They are spending prolonged time in the bathroom and you're wondering, what are you doing? How long does it take a shower? In the meantime, they are growing. They can become very self-centered and place their needs before the needs of others. In Nairobi, when you drive down the streets of Nairobi, there are some fruit vendors on the streets, and it's not uncommon for a Kenyan parent to pull off the road and buy, some bananas. And maybe you have 3 kids at home and you buy a bunch of bananas, maybe 2 bunches of bananas, sweet bananas, the little finger bananas, and each bunch probably has 12 bananas in it. So you buy 2 of those bunches and you go home, and there's 3 children, 2 teenagers and a younger one, and there's 2 parents. You place the bananas there. You come back an hour later and 1 bunch is gone. You're thinking, what happened? And 16-year-old Jimmy just took it to his room. He wants to eat the bananas. He's completely oblivious of the fact that there are 5 people in that house. He's disregarding the feelings of others and placing his own feelings and his own needs ahead of all the others. He's preoccupied only with his needs and his emotions. And the inexperienced parent begins to quarrel, and there is fights in the house. Yes, there's a discussion to be held, but you don't have to quarrel over it, do you? You don't have to quarrel over it. I'm painting a picture of what you might see happening in this home. There is moodiness, very, very moody. Now, some of you think it's only girls who get moody. Wait till you get teenagers. Boys get moody as well. And sometimes they can become very aggressive. The girls can become boorish and ill-mannered and very hard to relate with. I'd mentioned earlier on how the 16-year-old girl would struggle to relate to their mother. And parents are having issues. It's just hard. What am I supposed to do? What were Christ's parents supposed to do? Christ was not rebellious, but they didn't understand his stage of life, and they were having a hard time. Now, let me put it to you this way. Your son or daughter who appears rebellious to you may not necessarily be rebellious. Perhaps it's you who needs to grow up and understand them. Remember, your 14-year-old has never been 14 before, and you need to be the one helping them to understand what being 14 looks like. They're going to make mistakes, just like your toddler made mistakes. You're trying to help them to walk, and they're walking and they're falling. You rebuke them for that? No, you don't. You hold their hands and help them to walk. Even so, in this stage of life, your 14-year-old will make mistakes. and they will need your help to help them walk. Then there is rebellion, point number 5. I said rebelliousness. I think the proper word is rebellion. There is defiance, and they are content to be a rudeness. And sometimes they don't mean to be, but they come out as rude. They are asking questions. They are pestering you. That's how you interpret it. But from their point of view, they're just learning. You're asking them to do certain things a particular way, and they know how to do it better. And you feel like they're being defiant. But in some cases, they are truly being defiant. Again, I'm painting a picture of some of the things that you might see when dealing with children of this particular age group, dealing with teenagers. This is not applicable for every teenager all the time. But if you took a spectrum of teenagers, and I consider 100 of you logged into this particular channel right now, if you all had teenagers, you'd find some of what I'm talking about in some of their lives. Number 6, friends become very important to these teenagers. And the influence of friends, you begin to see it in your teenager wanting to change the clothes they wear to look more like those of the peer group, the shoes they wear, their hairstyle or lack of hairstyle, the music they listen to, everything is changing and the parent is worried. Now, don't worry. If you didn't make an investment in these children when they were young, yes, you do have reason to worry. And many parents are worried about the bad influence from other peers. That's something to worry about. But have you ever considered that your teenager may be the source of bad influence? Not just the recipient of it, but the source of it. But the fact that your teen wants to be with their friends, that is not something to worry about. You just have to be concerned about what kind of friends. The fact that their taste for clothes is changing should not worry you. You should realize they are growing and changing and will soon become adults. Now, remember what I said earlier. This is a stage of life where there is a search for identity. And the clothes they wear, they may be wearing a style that reminds them of the person they're looking up to. And the parent is really frustrated. They come to you in a particular hairstyle. Instead of being frustrated, look at them and say, wow, that looks interesting, Becky. That looks really interesting. How did you get that hair done? Be intrigued by your teenager instead of always fighting them. And when they find that you're intrigued, they will begin to open up to you. Number 7, the need for the teenager to belong to a peer group. You know, when you go into big cities around the world, a place like Chicago, you've got gangs that are terrorizing people with guns. Many of these gangs are made up of boys in their late teenage stage of life. Girls, on the other hand, can get into gangs, but not very often. Very often they make best of friends. And some of you listening to me can remember your best friend in high school. Some of you are still in touch with their best friends. In our daughter's wedding last year, her best mate was her best friend in high school. And because of spending time with others, they are realizing that not everybody was raised with the same values as them. So they come back home and they are questioning you about your values. And because they are questioning you, you interpret that to be criticism. And if you are not built for it, you begin to fight back. You're thinking, what's wrong with my teenager? There's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong. They're just asking questions. They have been to their friend's house and noticed they do things differently. Now they come back home, they're asking you, Mom, why do we eat ugali every day? Mom, why do we? And they ask questions and they want to know the why. And a simple answer will do, but sometimes we are frustrated by their questions. Mom, why do we comb your hair in a particular way? Mom, why do you always wear a headscarf? Mom, why do we drink tea every day? Mom, they're asking questions. You see, a rebellious spirit is cultivated among peers who resist control. Now listen carefully. Someone does need to mute their speaker. A rebellious spirit is cultivated among peers who resist control. Now you have to realize that while teachers and parents are a big influence on their teenagers, their biggest influence is their peer. And in our organization, we have a program called Peers Without Pressure, where we coach parents on how to influence their teenagers along with their peers. Because if you don't do that, the peers will continuously give negative pressure to each other. So you want to step in as a parent and be able to influence them together. You step in not to fight the fact that they've got peers, but to influence them properly for the right thing. And so teenagers who no longer refer to their parents or to teachers or to other adults, but only to their peer group, very soon become rebellious. Let's move on to point number 8. Your teenager will begin to experience and exercise a very strong sense of justice. They want justice done. But let me add, they may have a very poor sense of mercy. This is the time where they feel that things are not going right in the home. If you happen to have a big age gap between your teenager and your other children, I know a family where there's a 7-year gap and there's sibling rivalry going on, intolerance of one another. And here's the reason for it. Let's say, for example, you have a 7-year-old and a 14-year-old. And the 7-year-old is disciplined in a particular way, but the 14-year-old is disciplined differently. Well, the 7-year-old thinks it's unfair. How come you don't discipline my brother the same way you discipline me? The 7-year-old thinks it's unfair that they have to go to bed at 8, but their 14-year-old brother can stay up until 10. And this apparent unfairness makes them feel this is not right. Mom, you're not being fair. You're not being just. The 14-year-old, on the other hand, is very unhappy with you. They says, Mom, when I was 7 years old, you were very strict with me. You used to spank me. You used to do this and the other. Why do you let my sister get away with so much? And that feeling of injustice makes them want to fight for justice. They don't want compromise. They are seeing things accurately from where they are looking at them. They're looking at them in a narrow view. They can see accurately, but they don't have the breadth of life. And so you're getting into unnecessary quarrels because their world is still quite limited and they are arguing from the small world they're exposed to. And what you ought to do as a parent is to agree with them and then expand their world instead of criticizing what they are seeing. Number 9, you'll begin to notice a new interest in sexuality. Now, when I began to teach on the course of parenting, 20 years ago, I would say, in those days, I would say, talk to your children about matters of sexuality 3 to 4 years before puberty. Well, that's too late these days. That's too late. I would say from age 3, they need to be receiving information, positive information from their parents about sexuality. And some of you are thinking, age 3, yes, age 3. If you don't do it, the world is already doing it. And the child tends to believe something the first time they hear it. If they hear the wrong message, they believe the wrong message, you're going to be fighting a catch-up game. But at this stage of life, there's a new interest in sexuality, an increase in activity in social media. And you have to be careful how to deal with this. I remember our son at age 16 had a girlfriend. Now in our home, we did not think it was necessary to have a girlfriend at that time, but he had a girlfriend and we got to know about it. And instead of hiding it, we said, he wanted to go spend some time with her at a restaurant. We said, hey, Michael, why don't you invite her home? And he said, home? I said, yes, invite her home. And then we coached him on how to do it. Why don't you call her mother? Call her mother and ask her if she can drop her off. Then we gave him the catchphrase, tell her mother that your parents are at home. If you don't tell her that, she won't bring her. And he picked up that phone and called the mother and got her permission to drop off her daughter at home. And she came. And her mother got to spend some time with my wife, and we fixed some coffee and some pancakes, and Michael had some time with this young lady who was a classmate of his back in school, and spent an hour in our home talking about whatever they were talking about. Now, many of us are horrified by the thought of the new interest in sexuality. Remember, parents, this is normal and natural, but you need to be able to help the teenager to manage this stage of life. So the keeping of a secret boyfriend is going on. Some of you have 9-year-olds who have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and instead of denying it, find out what's going on and walk alongside your teenager instead of fighting everything. They will soon lose interest in that person. But if you're constantly fighting, you know what's going to happen? That relationship will go underground and you will lose everything. Having looked at those 9 things, and I'm going to be closing in a short time and inviting some questions. What I've described to you is normal behavior. But the big question, especially for the Christian parent, is normal behavior necessarily acceptable behavior? You see, teenagers need to know that actions have consequences. They may not want your guidance, but they need it. And as a parent of a teenager, their behavior very often reveals your character. If your teenager is always making you angry, remember what the Bible says in Ecclesiastes 7:9, do not be anxious in your heart to be angry, because anger resides in the bosom of fools. Let me suggest to you that your teenager is not making you angry, but the teenager is revealing the anger that already exists in you. So these teaching sessions are not so much of what you must do to bring your teenager back, what you must do in terms of skills. There's a time for skills, but the bigger thing is what kind of person ought you to be to your teenager? What kind of person ought you to be? And the teenager is looking for someone whom they can pattern their life after. Remember, the search for identity is going on. And if you are the right, stable character, they will want to fashion their lives after you. But if you are the kind of parent who's screaming all the time and things are not going well in that home, your teenager will have a different reference point. You will not be their reference point. I'm going to pause there, and I'm going to post here information on how you can reach us. And I'm going to allow you to post questions on the chat, and or just unmute and ask a question, and we'll have some time to interact over it. Have I painted a picture of some of the things you are seeing within your home? Give me some feedback. Shadrach, go ahead. Shadrach, you've unmuted. Please go ahead. Is there another with a question or a comment?
Dr. Mukolwe.
Yes, sir.
There are a few questions in the chat session. Would you want to check on them?
Yes, yeah. Okay, I'm going to go there. It says, very eye-opening. My daughter, who's 7, had the F word from a classmate and was intrigued by it. In your view, what is the right way to explain it without feeling embarrassed, but at the same time take advantage to preach? Okay, I would, if a child comes home and they already have a word or something that they're talking about, I would want to ask the question, to ask them how much they already know. So I would say, oh, really? Who said that to you? Okay, what do you understand by that? I would remain very, very calm. Now, that's not easy. You have to train yourself to be calm. I'll be very, very calm, and I'll ask questions. Draw them out so you get to hear as much as you can hear. So that's the first thing I'll do. Don't show any surprise in terms of raised voice or something like that. I just turned to her and said, where did you hear that word? Says, oh, I heard it in school. Oh, really? Was that from your teacher? No, it was from so and so. So guide them in getting the information. And then you ask them, do you know what that word means? And they'll say, no. Well, let me tell you what it means. Then I'll sit down and we'll talk about it. So here's the principle. Don't be shocked at what they say. Even though you are shocked, don't express shock, because that will make them not want to say anymore. Ask them in a very calm voice where they heard it. Get as much information as you can get from them, and then begin to instruct them from there on. Someone is asking, what was that verse from Ecclesiastes? I believe it's 7 verse 9. I said it from memory. I hope I got it right. Ecclesiastes 7:9. The changes happening is so much on the point. The examples too, is good to know they are normal. True, it's me to grow up and help them understand themselves. That's really good. Wallace is saying, good morning. Thank you for joining us today. Yes, feel free to send your questions. Is the talk being recorded? Some parents are trying to join Zoom, but it takes a maximum of 100. Yeah, we know with this kind of situation, you do have to close the classroom at some point. Is it being recorded? I don't know if the chat is recording it, but you can reach us privately on email, and we can help you to access some of the audio recordings that have been done professionally on this situation. I missed out point number 3. Can anyone help? I'll go back to those slides in just a moment so you can pick that up. Let's see. Someone is asking privately. I can't give their details here. Yes, they want to engage with me. I will. Let me suggest to you, ma'am, you've seen our work phone number on the last slide I presented. Please reach us on that work phone number. And since I can't give my phone on this forum, reach us on that work phone number. We'll be able to get to you. Yes, sir.
I have a few questions that have been posed here.
Yes.
Do you want me to go ahead?
Please ask them, because I'm going through the ones here, and many of them are just comments.
Oh, and they're just comments. Well,
yes.
Someone is asking, how do you manage your child who has been exposed to sexualized social media from her friends?
Okay. Number one, you want to know what they know. I remember being in teaching in Rwanda last year, and I asked parents of 3 to 5 year old what their children know about sexuality, and they said nothing. And then one parent came up and said, my child came to me, my 5-year-old came to me and asked me, Dad, Mom, do you know how sex is done? 5-year-old. And the mom said, no, how is it done? And the 5-year-old went ahead and described in graphic detail what goes on. The mother was horrified. And the mother asked, who taught you that? And he mentioned the name of another 5-year-old who was a neighbor. You can imagine the horror on the mom's face. The mom asks, who taught him that? Oh, it's their house help. He showed them everything on their cell phone. And friends, the presence of smartphones has some big advantages, but some huge disadvantages. And then the child went on to say, the child mentioned the neighbor's name, the 5-year-old neighbor's name, how she does it with her sister who is 4. The mother is even more horrified and asks her, how about you? I do it with my cousin. Now, friends, these are not made up stories. They are exposed at a very early age. A couple of years ago, I had to speak at a prestigious gated community here because 6-year-olds and 5-year-olds were having sex. So the question is, how do you handle this? The issue is not the sex. The issue is the negligence in the home. You don't fix this thing at the sex level. You fix it at the negligence level. Everybody is gone and people are experimenting. You see, children believe what adults tell them. And if an adult is showing them sexual content on like pornographical content, and the children are watching it and seeing the people in the video seem to be having fun, that child, the next thing they want to do is to emulate what they saw. And so you have to tell them that that is wrong. First of all, what they saw, they should never have been exposed to it. You need to find out from whom they learned it. You need to close that relationship and begin your own positive sexual education for these children. We have content on that, on how and when to talk to your children about sex. See, by that time, you've passed the embarrassment level. The child knows a lot more than you know, than you think they know. So find out what they know and teach them the right thing. Now, if you're the kind of parent that gets really embarrassed and cannot talk about it, I would suggest you get together with other parents of children the same age. One of you has the courage to talk. And when you've got the parents together and the children together, let the one who's courageous begin to talk and the rest of you join in the question answer time. Let it be a teaching session, not a rebuking session. And then of course you correct them. But if you come strongly immediately and shut off everything, the behavior will go underground, or the child may never want to bring up that subject again, but you've missed out your opportunity of teaching them right from wrong. Did I come out clear?
Yes, Doctor, I think you've come out clear.
Okay, I'll let you coordinate the questions, sir.
Yes, there are also more questions coming in. I think there's also this whole issue of teenagers and social media. You know, how do you get to really monitor them without them feeling that you're mistrusting them? And how do you get to, to just give them the boundaries of social media, because sometimes they are just alone in their bedroom. Those are many questions. I've just summarized some of those questions.
Okay. Number one, what are your own patterns for social media? You as a parent, what are your patterns? Are you constantly on the phone at home? Now, you may be in good social media, but it's social media nonetheless. So number one is examine your own patterns, because your children may be doing just what you are doing. That's number one. Number two, during this COVID time, they are missing their friends. They can't meet with them. So they want to meet with them on social media. So what I would do is to set rules when they can go on social media, but then don't abandon them the other time. Give them activities they can be involved in, and play with your children. You're thinking, what? Yes. Children would rather play with another person. They'd rather play with their parents than play with toys be on the screens. If you buy games like drafts, like chess, like what's this word game? Forming words. Sorry?
Scrabble.
Scrabble, yes. Invest in those games and spend time playing with them. When you do that, you get to learn your child's abilities, your child's challenges, your child's character. So what I'm saying is that don't just monitor the social media and be the rebuking parent. Give them alternatives and set boundaries around the social media situation, and then set it by your own example. Play outside of the house, play indoors, have lots of conversations, read books together. This is the time to catch up. The world is falling apart. This is the time to strengthen the family. Don't let the family fall apart. Then, of course, the other thing is that get intrigued with what they are watching on social media. Go to them and say, son, what are you watching? And if your son hides his phone when you go in the room, already there's something going on that should not be going on. Remind them that the entire world is your neighbor when you're on social media. And so the choice of friends is critical. But when you ask them in a gentle voice, son, what are you watching? They say, oh, mom, I'm watching football on my phone. Or mom, I'm just chatting with so-and-so who's my neighbor. Depending on how you approach them, you'll get a wholesome response or you will get a negative response. Some children just say nothing when there's a whole lot going on. So the training of the parent to know how to approach their teenager on these matters of social media or any other matter is very, very important.
Thank you, Dr. That was well said. Allow me to ask this question. This is not about social media. It says, the other day, my teen said she's fasting to support her Muslim friend during Ramadan. How would you have handled that? That's interesting.
Tell them fasting is a wonderful Christian practice. And I would want to find out, what does supporting them mean? She wants to identify with them. Now, that fast that goes on during Ramadan, it's a fast during the day, but they do eat at night. And you can actually live the rest of your life in that state. Your body does get nourishment. It's not a fast that will destroy anybody. So I would say I would not start by criticizing. I would start by saying, oh, that's great. What will you do during that fast? I could join you and we could pray for your friends. So don't get into a fight. Fasting is not just a Muslim thing, it's a Christian thing as well. Find out what is intriguing them about the fast and find out if you can join to pray for their friend during that particular time. When you approach the situation without a fight, you'll be surprised at how quickly they connect with you. And they may fast for 1 or 2 days and give it up, but you have gained the relationship with that teenager instead of criticizing them.
Thank you, Dr. Mukolwe. Let me ask this also. My question is, what do we do if, as parents, we are differing on how to deal with raising children?
Get help. Get help. Come to our classes. And I'm being very serious here. You see, we all come from different backgrounds, and our parenting styles have been influenced on how we have been raised. And although some of us don't like the way we were raised, it is the very thing we are doing. We are doing the very thing we hated. And some of us are doing the opposite of how we were raised. So we are in a situation where we are struggling to raise our children correctly because of the influence of our forefathers. Now, there's an interesting verse in, I believe it's Lamentations 5:7. It says, our forefathers sinned and are no more, and we carry their iniquities. And so some of the challenges that went on in your home growing up, you are carrying them on in your home right now. And so you and your wife have come from different backgrounds and you are clashing, and guess who is suffering? The children. I would say get help. Abandon your position, each of you, and get a common position that is Bible-based and have a new norm for your home. Get help.
Thank you, Dr. I don't know, can we pick the last question, then we continue?
You can pick the last question. I could continue, but I was going to pause right there altogether and engage you. How much time do you have left?
Right now is around 10:40, 22.
10:40.
Yes.
Yeah, so we have a good 20 more minutes of interaction.
Yeah, so we can interact.
There is something I can share if there are no more questions. Something I can get.
There are more questions. There are more questions, but you can finish up and then you can go to the questions.
Okay. I'm going to get into something here that would help to trigger some questions, and that might be very, very helpful. Let me just get into it in just a moment. I'm bringing up a slide that you would be able to illustrate the point I'm about to make. Okay, now, some of you have teenagers who are very, very inquisitive. They ask very many questions. They come to you, and it's as if they're draining you emotionally. You are the fueler for this teenager, and they are the drainer. They are taking away from you. Now, if that's happening to you, don't worry. That's normal. Your teenager wants to learn from you, and they are learning from you. The parent fueling the teenager, this is part of normal parenting. Now, trouble comes in when the parental fuel line is cut off. The parental fuel line is no longer flowing. For whatever reason, the parent is distressed emotionally, the parent is too busy, and the child is not able to access that fuel line. So what happens is that your teenager, depicted as a drainer teen in green, begins to fuel from their peers. And let me tell you, peer fuel is dirty fuel. But every teenager does fuel from their peers. And this becomes more pronounced when the parental fueling line has been cut off. So what do you do when that happens? Number one, the parent must learn how to fuel from God. It is the only way to keep your fuel line supplied. So here's a question for you. Apart from attending church and reading marathon through your Bible, do you actually spend time with the Lord? Do you linger on scripture and allow the Lord to feed you? If you do that and your fuel line with the Lord is open, you will be fueled by the Lord. But apart from that, we want you to also connect your teenager and your younger children to the Lord as well. So the teenagers are being fueled by the Lord as well. So now, this teenager in your home has two lines of fuel. One is from you, the other is directly from the Lord. And those parents who have learned this particular discipline have less discipline issues in their home because the teenager is hearing from God. But let me progress this further. Apart from, look at the green line. The green line is you, the parent, fueling from the Lord, ministering to your teenager who is also fueling from the Lord. Now remember the red down there, the peer fueling, this will always be there. You can't cut it off. It will always be there. But if your teen is fueling from God and fueling from you, you are having some influence. But there's two other influences here that I want to mention. You as a parent in green needs to have peer parents where you fuel together. And so like in the Karura Community Church, there are a good number of, there are 100 people on this particular talk, and I'm sure many of them are not from the church, but you from the church get together as parents, study content together, and fuel from one another. Don't just get together and talk about how terrible it is to have teenagers. To get together and influence each other positively. The assumption, of course, is that the peer parents are also already fueling from the Lord. So now this parent has a direct source from the Lord, but is also fueling from other parents who are influenced by the Lord. But there's a third dimension I want to introduce, the one in purple, the mentor. Now, let's assume for a moment that you've got your 13-year-old. What class would that be? Class 7, class 6 or 7? And let's take another child who is 6 years older. So yours is 13. There's one who is 19. Now, the 19-year-old is ahead of the 13-year-old. Educationally, they're ahead by very many steps. They have already gone over the class 7, class 8 exam hurdle. They have gone over the Form 4, the pre-university exam hurdle, and they are probably a first or second year at the university. Academically, there's a huge difference between these two. Age-wise, it's only 6 years old. Your 13-year-old has a deep respect. Your 13-year-old in class 8 or class 7 has a deep respect for a 19-year-old who's in university. Now, do you have some of those within your community? Cause the paths of those children to cross with the paths of your children. You see, you can't force friendships, but you can create forums where interaction naturally takes place, and you can talk to the 19-year-old ahead of time that you'd like them to make friends with your son. Now, this 19-year-old needs to be a child of good moral standing, hopefully one who is being fed by the Lord, and one whom you can also influence. So you've got a 19-year-old who can tell something to your 13-year-old and they will listen. Things that you have been trying to tell them for a long time, and you have not been getting anywhere with it. Now they can talk to them and the 13-year-old can listen. So establish some mentor relationships that can also fuel your teenager. So now this teen has fuel from 3 sources: from you as the parent, from God, and from a positive mentor. So 3 clean sources of fuel. And of course, the peer fueling is always there. And then lastly, let me share with you the ideal situation for you to help this teenager. Pay attention now to the dotted line. The dotted line comes from you, the parent, and comes down and surrounds your teenager along with their peers. This is called influencing your teen with their peers and connecting your teen and their peers to God. You see that? So now you're no longer afraid of peer pressure. You are actually entering your teen's world and the world of their peers and influencing them with the scriptures. They are gathering in your home, and you are the one fixing them popcorn as they watch a movie. Then you're going to have some time in the scriptures together. You allow them to do the things that teenagers do together. It's not always serious moments. They play. They want to come to your home. They're telling each other, let's go to Michael's dad's home. Why? Because Michael's dad is there and it's really fun. You are the parent who is present in that home. You are the one playing football with them. You are the one fixing them popcorn. You are the one talking about the movies they are watching. You are the one they are talking to about their issues. But you are also the one who is getting them in the scriptures. You are connecting them to God. And very soon, the dirty peer fuel begins to turn into good fuel. Let me stop there and get some reaction, and then we'll close the session.
Thank you, Dr. Mukolwe. We really appreciate. Can I go ahead and ask a few questions right now?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay. There was a parent who was asking, how do you advise? How would you go about overweight issues for 10-year-old children without injuring their esteem?
Okay. Why is that child overweight will be the question I'd want to ask. And also ask the question, are there other people in that home who are overweight? Chances are they are. Is that child having any medical issues? Because the overweight could be due to medical issues. If there are no medical issues, perhaps it's just an issue of self-control. Maybe it's an issue of the types of food they eat. Maybe it's an issue of the frequency they are eating. I would change that diet and I would take them for walks. I'd get them to exercise without telling them you're exercising to lose weight. I would take them for walks. I would be involved in the exercise with the children and just feed them a healthy diet. So it is true that if you keep on criticizing their weight, their self-image goes down. I would look at the things they do very well. Now that child is perhaps being teased by other children. And if you happen to know that they are being teased with other children, you can build up upon that. If you know, for example, that they are no longer getting along with a particular child, ask them, why isn't so-and-so your friend anymore? And if you have a good relation, they will tell you, Mom, he just keeps calling me fat all the time, and I don't really like that. Says, oh, I'm so sorry about it. Connect with them emotionally, and then talk about the subject. So I would look at the diet. I'd look at who else is overweight in the home. Perhaps the way you cook in the home ought to change altogether. I'll bring up snacks, fruit snacks, and take away fast food snacks or minimize their intake. I would feed them on a healthy diet, and I would exercise with them and see what happens. And I would also praise the child for the positive things they do and work on the negative without making the negative a big deal.
I love the part that you say you praise the child,
Yes.
That's very encouraging for them.
That child is very good at something. Praise what they are very good at. And then you can work through what they're struggling with.
Okay, Doctor, let me ask this question too. Someone is asking, a parent is asking, how do you get to handle a child who's not interested in reading or schoolwork?
Not interested in reading for schoolwork.
Yes.
Okay, I'll give an example of one of our children. She did not like to read, but she was in a school where they were given books to read and she didn't like to do it. The way we decided to look at it, it's like having a car with a battery that's almost dead. You can't start that car. So what do? You need to jump start it. So this is what we did. When she came from home, from school with her books to read, we'd always ask her, what's the deadline on this assignment? And she would give us the deadline. Oh, it's 3 weeks from now, Mom. I can read it, start reading 2 weeks from now. We'd say, no. This is a very interesting book. Let's read it together. And so what my wife actually did, is credit to my wife. Our daughter would come back from school and they would sit down on our veranda and take a cup of tea, and my wife would pick up that book and read one chapter to my daughter out loud. So there's two of them sitting there. My wife's reading the first chapter, and my daughter is captive audience. She's listening. At the end of that first chapter, my wife hands the book to her and says, now you read to me the second chapter. We're jump-starting her. And by reading for her, you're fueling her. Okay? So now she may not like it, but she's your captive audience and you're not rebuking her, you're helping her. So she reads the second chapter. When the second chapter is over, tell them, well done. Tomorrow, I read chapter 3 and you read chapter 4. Now she has something to look forward to. Do you know, after 3 days, Mom went and said, okay, are we doing chapter 9 today? And she smiled and says, no, we're doing chapter 14. Mom says, how come? Says, oh, because last night when I went to bed, I didn't really go to bed. I read 4 more chapters. The vehicle had been successfully jump-started. You see what I'm saying? So parental involvement, not criticism all the time. Get in there, get to know what's going on. Ask yourself, how can I help? Jump in there and help. Jump-start that child. Charge that battery and see them take off. That child is going to be a lawyer. She just graduated with her degree in business and wants to go to law school. And as a lawyer, you have to read. And we helped her get to read. She didn't like reading. Now she's reading.
Thank you, Dr. Wow, that was really encouraging. I appreciate it. There's a question here. If one has a very naughty child or naughty toddler, is it possible to over-discipline them, thus make the sort of rebellious or hardened to discipline? Is it possible to actually over-discipline a very naughty child?
Yes, it is. It is possible to over-discipline, and you must avoid over-discipline. Here's a phrase you need to remember. What is the need behind the deed? If your child is constantly repeating the same thing over and over again, watch yourself. Watch at how you correct that child. Does that child respond better when someone else corrects them? Perhaps the issue is not even the child. The issue is us. Maybe the child is rebellious towards one parent and not another. So examine your own approach first, but find out what's the need behind the deed. Why is it that the discipline is not achieving the correct outcome, and tackle it from what's going on behind the scene. Yes, but the answer is yes, it is possible to over-discipline.
Well, let me ask this last question that I've seen. Someone is asking, how do you even begin a session of sexuality with a child below 10 years? Where do you even start?
I would say, Pastor Joshua, organize a session on how and when to talk to your children about sex, because it's not just about sex. It's a whole lifestyle that you're talking about. It's so many parents are preoccupied with the child making a mistake, but it's a whole education you need to give that child. I could run for you 6 different sessions of how and when to talk about sex. But very, very briefly, one of the things that you do, depending on the age group, talking about the parts of the body. The child already knows them. So you always want to begin with what they know and build upon it. Ask them questions about what they already know. Let me not get into it because I cannot really. It's a big topic, but overcome your challenges as a parent. When I was doing this with my son, we read a book. The book was called The Purity Principle. We read that book. He was about 9, 10 maybe. I let him read it, and then I had my own copy. Then we went out on a 24-hour retreat, and we read together, paused, and talked about the different things. It's very helpful to have a book, by the way. And we have here with us books of how to talk to children about sex, ages 3 to 5, 5 to 8, 8 to 11, 11 to 14. They're there. We also have a book for parents of how and when to talk to them about sex. The thing you must overcome is parents get very, very paranoid, very, very upset when a child mentions anything to do with sexuality. And instead of finding out what the child already knows, the fact they're upset and they're responding with anger makes the child shut them out. So that's a whole topic for another day. But I'm willing to take it on when that time comes.
Thank you, Dr. Ari. Truly, 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 truly appreciate. Well, I don't see any more questions, but I really appreciate the session. I really appreciate the fact that you were able to tackle some of these questions. The fact of the matter, it's really a big struggle for many parents, and especially not only just during this season of COVID, but even after and even before. And we are all trying to learn this parenting thing. And we thank God for people like you that have been called to this area, that God is using to really equip us for this parenting session. You usually have classes. When do the classes, how can people join your classes for parenting?
Very good question, Pastor Joshua. I had displayed a website for us. Those of you who did not get to write that down, it's really easy. The word is raisingfutureparents.com. Raisingfutureparents as one word.com. If you get to our website, we've got various classes that we offer. Some of them are for parents of children 12 and below. Some of them are for parents of teenagers, and I gave you a glimpse of what we teach in that particular class. If you are having a classroom session, a live classroom session, that session will take 2 hours because we'll be interacting as we go through the class. I would probably cover it not as quickly as I did it this time. So you can register online and come to class. And with this COVID season, we are actually going to have a teenage parenting class beginning. Let me put it this way: get on our website. We're going to put up some dates later on today on when you're going to begin. It's going to be, I think, the 3rd Saturday of June, but we'll put it up on the website. There'll be a small registration fee, but then you will come in and have 8 2-hour sessions. We have books. I'd like to recommend a book called Courageous Parenting, which you can collect from the Navigators Kenya. Those of you who don't know where we are located, just put the word Navigators Kenya in your Google Maps. If you live in Nairobi, it will bring you here. Because of COVID, use the phone numbers that we gave you on the screen to call ahead of time, because we are not open all the time. I'm going to put up on the chat, I'm going to put up 2 email addresses so that you can reach us by email. Let me see. Okay, I'm putting up the email address, parenting at raisingfutureparents.com. It's put up in caps, but really it should be in small letters, parenting at raisingfutureparents.com. If you want to reach me directly, you can reach me at mukolwe@gmail.com. Now, when you go to our website, there is also the option of taking the online class. We have an online class that offers 25 videos, professionally recorded videos that will give you a good education for parents of children 0 to 12. Again, there's a small fee for that. It's, I think, during this COVID season, we are charging just 2,000 shillings. It is self-paced, but you have 30 days to complete your class. When this season is over, it will go back to the normal price of 9,900. So take full advantage of the huge discount. Get in there and learn at your own pace. If you want to go there directly without going through the website, just click on online class.raisingfutureparents.com, and that will take you straight to the site of the online class. One more thing, I think there's a lady called Jack Murillo that wants to ask a question. Jackie, you can come in a few minutes. But those are the options that you are having. We have a class on processing anger. We've got a class on how to disciple your own children. We've got a class for parents of children 12 and below. Then we've got a class for parents of teenagers. So 4 different classes that we offer. Get information from our website. Jack Murillo, your hand is up. Please unmute and ask your question. Jack, can you hear me? Okay, I assume the hand was up by mistake. She cannot hear me. Pastor Joshua, it's 11 o'clock. This was the official time of ending our session. Let me thank you all for taking time this morning to come to this session. And when a new session is organized, we'll be in touch with you and be able to build you up to be able to raise your teenagers responsibly. The Lord bless you.
Thank you, Dr. Mukolwe. A mighty salute from us as Karura Community Chapel and the family. We are grateful for what you have done. May the Lord continue to just equip you with more knowledge and insights to keep helping many more parents who are still in this journey. And we are all in this journey. And we thank God that we can have people who've gone ahead, people who the Lord has raised in this generation to do such a job. So may the Lord bless you and your family more and more and continue to fulfill his promises over your life. Allow me to read this verse before I